Hey everyone, what's up? I'm Ashley of Noth, and today I'm bringing you the sister video to my recent released Dario Season 8 character return video. Today's video is covering my thoughts on the Season 8 Jaqen Hagar return, so if you're interested in my take on the Lorathi assassin's possible return, just keep watching. Jaqen is another character who, in my opinion, got a very clean exit, and this left a bigger plot hole in the story than Dario's end. The last time we saw Jaqen was Season 6, Episode 8, when he discovered the waif's face had been freshly hung in the Hall of Faces. Arya confronts him about sending the waif to kill her, and Jaqen tells her that she's finally no one, to which Arya responds that she's Arya Stark of Winterfell and she's going home. This makes Jaqen happy because as Arya leaves, he grins. So yes, Jaqen served his purpose of training Arya, but I get the feeling that there's a lot of unfinished business here. We don't know why Arya was allowed to leave. We don't know why Arya was chosen in the first place, and we don't know the Faceless men's motivation in the Game of Thrones. I think attempting to answer these questions may shed light onto whether or not we'll see Jaqen again. Just the fact that Jaqen allowed Arya to leave shows the Faceless men have a vested interest in either Arya herself or Arya's ambitions in Westeros. In case anyone forgot, a Faceless man by policy cannot kill someone they know. The goal of becoming no one is complete abnegation of self so you can do your job efficiently. Not only did Arya profess herself Arya Stark, but Jaqen knows Arya has every intention of killing people she knows who wronged her family, because he knows about her list. So why is it that Arya is allowed to walk away with her life in full violation of the Faceless men's rules? The obvious answer is that Jaqen never intended for Arya to be no one, that she was recruited for another purpose. This notion is seemingly confirmed by Tom Wlaschiha, the actor who plays Jaqen Hagar. In 2016, Wlaschiha told Access Hollywood, "In my opinion, it was clear from the beginning. I mean, that's the reason he trained her. He didn't train her to become a faceless man and stay in the House of Black and White in Bravos." I think that the Faceless men, they certainly have an interest in what's going on in Westeros. Otherwise, why would he have just shown up out of the blue in Season 2 and picked Arya and offered to train her? So there must be some sort of interest. Let's talk about that interest, as it applies to why Arya was allowed to leave and why she was chosen. I was discussing this with friend and blood writer Jim Young, and he raised a great point. It's possible that the followers of the many-faced god think Arya is some sort of Azor Ahai savior type, similar to how Melisandre thought of Stannis, and they sought her out accordingly. If they thought the fate of the world rested on Arya's shoulders, of course they'd allow her to leave at the completion of her training. And we'd probably expect to see Jaqen shadow Arya in some way should she need his assistance. Similar to how Melisandre is still shadowing Jon from afar. Admittedly, we know precious little about the Faceless men and followers of the many-faced god, so there's not really a way to verify this yet, but we do know cultures and religions all throughout A Song of Ice and Fire have variations of the same Azor Ahai prophecy. So why wouldn't the followers of the many-faced god? And we know, thanks to Maester Aemon and Missandei, certain Valyrian words have no gender. So again, why couldn't those who worship the many-faced god interpret the savior to be a woman? Let me know what you think of this down in the comments. I really like this idea, and kudos to you, Jim, for thinking of this. Next, I'd like to reference something else Tom Wlaschiha said. He said that he thinks the Faceless men have an interest in what's going on in Westeros, elsewise Jaqen wouldn't have popped up out of the blue in Season 2 to recruit Arya. This is exactly my thought as well, and it explains why I think Arya was allowed to leave the House of Black and White in full violation of everything the Faceless men stand for. Arya's self-interests and the Faceless men's interests in Westeros are the same. While we've never got definitive confirmation on the Faceless Men's interest in Westeros, we do know Arya's because she has a list. And Jaqen Hagar knows about this list because Arya shared it. Now, Arya didn't give all her names, just a select few. There was significant emphasis on the Hound, and the odd thing about that was the wife asked Arya about him before Arya gave names. So how would the wife even know about him? Well, in Season 5, Jaqen played the game of Faces with Arya, and again, there was emphasis on the Hound, so it's possible that's how the wife knew. She knew from Jaqen. But again, how would Jaqen even know about him? Arya got a whack from Jaqen when she claimed Polliver was her captor, not the Hound. How would Jaqen know that this is a lie? Well, this is pure speculation, but I believe back in Season 4, Arya encountered Jaqen while in the Hound's custody. In Season 4, Episode 7, Arya and the Hound encounter a dying man in some random village. Arya has a very frank dialogue with this man about nothing, how being nothing isn't better or worse than anything because nothing is nothing. In essence, she was talking about being no one. Then, this man asks Jaqen Hagar's signature question. Who are you? This is, unbeknownst to Arya, her first game of Faces. And then, Jaqen / the man asks the Hound who he is, and the Hound says specifically that he's Arya's captor, taking her to her aunt. So this is how I think Jaqen knew Arya lied about who her captor was, and why Jaqen kept whacking Arya. He was telling her, and us, that the Faceless Men don't want the Hound dead. This notion is reinforced by the wife getting Arya to admit that she'd taken the Hound off her list, and forcing Arya to think about why she no longer hated the Hound. Now, I say all this to show the vested interest hints. The Hound was emphasized as a definite no, but none of the other names Arya stated were emphasized as no's. So, one could deduce that by letting Arya go, knowing full well who specifically Arya intended to kill, that the Faceless Men wanted those same people dead. So, who are they? Cersei Lannister, Gregor Clegane, and Walder Frey. That these three names were given tells me that the Faceless Men's vested interest in Westeros is possibly an anti-Lannister sentiment. You could even take this a step further and argue that by allowing one of its assassins to remove Cersei and key Lannister underlings, that the Faceless Men may possibly support another leader who would ascend the throne if the Lannisters were removed from power. I think we all know what type of restoration I'm talking about, but that's a video for another time. As we did with Daario, it is again time to ask, how? How will we see Jaqen Hagar again were he to return in Season 8? Well, first I want to acknowledge that I think he absolutely will return in Season 8. As I've demonstrated, there hasn't really been a time that Jaqen left Arya alone, so I don't expect him to now. That being said, let's take what we suspect their self-interest could be, an anti-Lannister establishment, and ask how this might open up a Jaqen return. Now that we've established a possible anti-Lannister sentiment, we must bear in mind that the Faceless Men are a foreign assassins guild that are relatively neutral in matters of diplomacy, so anybody can get that work. If they are appearing to want certain folks dead, it's because they've been paid to want them dead. So, who would want and have the finances to order a hit on the Queen of Westeros, Cersei Lannister? The Iron Bank. Now, it's also possible that the Faceless Men and the Iron Bank are two extensions of the same business, so the Iron Bank's interests are the Faceless Men's interests. That would be its own video. If you guys want to see that, let me know. I won't go in depth beyond mentioning it's a possibility. Either way, I think the Iron Bank makes sense as the entity that ordered the hit on Cersei. What is it they say about the Iron Bank? When princes failed to repay the Iron Bank, new princes sprang up from nowhere and took their thrones. And we know the Crown has amassed a massive debt with the Iron Bank that until very recently the Crown refused to pay. In fact, in Season 7, Episode 3, the Iron Bank sent a representative to King's Landing to collect on the debt. Cue Jaqen H'ghar's return. I think he already returned in Season 7, but not with his own face. I think Jaqen returned as the Iron Bank rep we saw with Cersei. I'm not saying this is a guarantee, but if I had to bet money, I'd say this is how Jaqen has been and will continue to be reintroduced to the story. Let's examine the dialogue the Iron Bank keyholder has with Cersei, as this is what tipped me off that he could be Jaqen in the first place. Tycho compliments Cersei on getting rid of the Faith Militant, and Cersei says the Sept's destruction was a tragic accident. Smirkingly, Tycho responds, "Indeed, sometimes tragedies are necessary to restore order and rational leadership." I don't know about you all, but to me, that was a death threat. There's a strong likelihood that the Faceless Men caused the doom of Valyria, so there's no limit to the tragedies they will induce to restore order. Also, what part about Cersei screams rational leadership? She murdered hundreds of people to escape being held accountable for her crimes by blowing up a sept with wildfire. The Iron Bank, by collecting the Crown's debt, is doing the same thing as the High Sparrow, holding Cersei accountable. So why on earth, after she's continuously thumbed her nose at the Iron Bank and slaughtered those who hold her accountable, would the Iron Bank support her? The only answer I can come up with is they wouldn't. Jaqen is lying to her in order to gain access, to give himself an in. This is seemingly confirmed by the next episode, in which Tycho Jaqen proposes to fund Cersei's future endeavors. It's as though he was looking for excuses to stay in King's Landing. And again, I'd like to point out how crazy the alliance is. During Tyrion's tenure as Master of Coin, he told Bronn that the Crown owed tens of millions to the Iron Bank. Since then, that debt has only increased, and it damn sure wasn't paid off. So again, I'm left wondering how this makes sense. My only answer is it doesn't, because this isn't about business. I think the Iron Bank will have its due and will clear the way for another to sit the throne by having a faceless man, Jaqen H'ghar, permanently end Cersei's reign. How ironic would that be if a Lannister who always pays their debts dies for failure to pay debts? Lastly, I know the main objection to this will be the Valonqar prophecy. While we don't know that Jaqen is not a little brother, I think a lot of fans have other candidates in mind for the job and might feel shortchanged if Jaqen was the one to kill Cersei. However, in the scene where Cersei gets her future read, Maggie the Frog only tells half of that future from the books. The Valonqar prophecy wasn't even mentioned, nor has it ever been on the show. So I'm starting to think it will be ignored and we shouldn't get our hopes up. Why else would D&D have left out the most important part of that scene? Because they don't intend to use it. Admittedly, I am a huge Jaqen H'ghar fan, so perhaps I'm biased, but I think the most lethal assassin in this story could pull off a pretty sweet kill. So I wouldn't be disappointed if the show actually went this route. Quite frankly, I don't even care about Cersei's plot anymore, and I think it's a mistake that she's still alive. So for me, the Valonqar prophecy sort of rings hollow in the show. Now, if I had to choose which character is more likely to reappear in Season 8, Daario or Jaqen, I would pick Jaqen. His character has represented more in the story than Daario, so the plot hole left in his wake is bigger. We have far more unanswered questions about Jaqen than we do Daario, and should Jaqen return, I think he does more for the story. Plus, Jon's presence in Dany's life negates much of the impact of a Daario return. In closing, I'd like to reference another Tom Wlaschiha interview which inspired me to do this video. Now, this interview was done exclusively in German, and I don't speak German, so I'm relying on the provided translation. I'm not sure who was interviewing him, as that info wasn't given, but the interviewer asked Tom if he would be in season 7, and Tom said, "I do not know. You forget things at my age." This non-denial denial immediately piqued my interest. If Tom wasn't coming back, wouldn't he have said so? I imagine he'd get in trouble for giving anything away, so he can't outright confirm a return. But if Tom wasn't coming back, a simple no wouldn't have hurt. So I'm left thinking Tom and Jaqen will come back. And this vagueness from Tom somewhat reaffirms my suspicion that Jaqen has returned, but with Tycho's face. If Tom confirmed Jaqen's return in season 7 and we didn't see Jaqen with his normal face, then it would have given away the surprise in the plot for Jaqen going forward, because we could have easily put 2 and 2 together. But again, this is pure conjecture, so we'll have to wait for season 8 to find out for sure. And that's going to be a wrap. I'm Ashley of Noth. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and join my Calazar. Thank you to Blood of My Blood Jim Young for sharing your idea about Arya with us. Thank you to everyone for watching. I hope you all have a fantastic day, and from me to you, 7 blessings, friends.